Hey Riya and Yeshoda, thank you so much for joining Samyak and I to Thinking Out Loud podcast. We are super stoked to have you here, and having the first pitch of the second season of Shark Tank India as an episode for us. I think that's an honor for us, if I may say so, and we are truly looking forward to have a very wonderful yet an insightful conversation to take this episode forward. Thank you again, Riya and Yashoda, for taking out time.
Thank you so much for having us here. Super excited for the podcast.
So I think for most of the audience, the main crux would be the entire Shark Tank bit, right? But we would want to step back a little and understand from your journey, because both of you have studied in the States and have some refined pedigree in your background in terms of Stanford and all, right? So just wanted to understand your childhood journey from India to the States, and then again having that innate passion within yourself to move out from the Silicon Valley, coming back to the Indian Silicon Valley, and starting something in the traditional segment.
So I can get started. So both of us are sisters also, in case we always forget to mention that. So Yeshda is the older one, I'm the younger sibling. So we both grew up in India. We went to school here and everything. So in Bangalore specifically. We also lived in Africa for 2 years. So that's where our parents used to work. So we used to live in Ethiopia, and we went to school there as well. And I think for college, we always kind of knew we wanted to go either to the UK or the US. Our parents also wanted us to kind of get out there and get that exposure, but also have that experience of living by ourselves, by working by ourselves, all of that stuff. So that was kind of how we ended up going abroad. I think personally for me, college was a really transformative experience. I loved all the time that I spent there. It was about 4 years. But I think I always knew that I wanted to come back to India. Just seeing the opportunities that are available in India, knowing the kind of impact that you can have here, that instead of moving numbers on an Excel sheet, you can kind of really make an impact to real people's lives. I think that was always exciting. Of course, thought that I'll work in America for a few years and then come back. But yeah, Yashda had the idea for Hoovu. So yeah, that you. Yeah, I mean, completely echoing what Rhea said as well. Of course, going to the US for college was a given, but I always wanted to come back. And I remember all my American friends used to ask, they're but don't Indians come here so you can get a visa and settle down? And they found it so odd. But I found it so offensive that was their assumption. I was like, absolutely not. My country's pretty great and I want to go back there. And it was such a great time for us to come back to as well, right? There's just so much going on in the startup community, or just generally people trying a lot of new things, a lot of innovation, a lot of government regulations changing and stuff. It felt like it was a pivotal point to come back to India. And especially when we got the idea of Hoovu and started too, that's when e-commerce was really picking up and there's just so much happening. Flipkart was doing really well, all of that. I think coming in within that atmosphere was so exciting that it felt like that's what we had to do. We had to have something that we wanted to start in India. Yeah, I think people always ask why this idea and why these founders? But a really important question is why now? I think this company works because of the ecosystem that we work in, right? If Geo hadn't happened with the internet, or Zomato, Swiggy, Dunzo, if these delivery apps hadn't happened, you're building on the shoulders of giants, right? Of course, there's 100 different ways it could have worked out, but the way it did is because of the environment that Bangalore has. I think it's more exciting to be building in Bangalore today than Silicon Valley, honestly. But yeah.
Which was the year you guys came back?
Yes,
Sorry?
Which was the year you guys came back?
So I came back to India in the end of 2016.
Okay.
Yeah, I came back in 2019, midway.
Okay.
And we started in 2019.
Okay, got it. Samarth, sorry.
So, guys, just one question, right, before we move forward, is that what is that difference between, the startup ecosystem, say, in the Silicon Valley side of things and, say, Bangalore side of things, right? Both of them are very, apex sort of bodies in the respective countries, right? And given that you guys spend time over there as well, and you are building from India for the world, how has been the difference in terms of the ecosystem play at both the regions?
Mm-hmm. So I can speak a little bit about that. So actually, my final year of college, I was involved in a startup on Stanford's campus as well. So we were like incubated at the Graduate School of Business. It was really, really exciting. And it was a tech startup. So it was kind of like the perfect fit of the place and the time. In terms of differences, I would say it's obviously very specific to my experience, but there is so many ideas and there's so much innovation happening in Silicon Valley, in California, that people are always building off of it, right? Like you hear the most absurd kind of startups happening. Like, just to give you an example, I would see all these weird vehicles, like these different kinds of bikes and tricycles and stuff for people to go to classes on. And it was all startups, everyone is trying to disrupt everything, even coming down to like what a skateboard looks like. So it's just like all these like really wacky ideas, and I think it really is at the cutting edge. Like I don't think anyone can deny that. My experience in Bangalore has been that the startups here are tackling different problems. I think here we're tackling problems. Of course, it's a generalization, but I think it's more for like 90% of people rather than like that 0.1% that I saw a lot of in Silicon Valley and specifically on a college campus, right? So I think that was what was interesting and different. Like, I think in India, most of the tech plays that I've seen also have some amount of human or operational element built in. Of course, that's not always true, but I think largely, like, there has to be some on the ground element. Because you're not just kind of building in the air or building for the people who are just like corporates or SaaS or, all of that stuff. You're actually changing people's day-to-day lives, whether it's like renting a bike on the street or like hiring a taxi. And I think those are the problems that the Bangalore ecosystem is solving for. Versus in Silicon Valley, a lot of that is already there. So you're just doing like value adds on top.
Understood. So again, since you gave a good comparison of how the Silicon Valley works there and out here, uh, just a quick question. So basically, there it's more of a very generic tech startup ecosystem where they are just building a good tech or a SaaS product, and they have grown there, and it's like more on a valuation side of the game. They are raising funds from VCs and everything. But here also we see that ecosystem developing, but we are also building a lot of different products, so as to say it's not just tech related or SaaS related, even though like Bangalore is called the tech capital of India. But do you think that is also a difference between Silicon Valley and what we are doing here?
Of course, that's a huge generalization. Like, I'm afraid to make that generalization and then receive all of the examples of how I'm wrong. Of course, there's a lot of like automated cars and stuff like that happening in Silicon Valley as well. Those are like physical products that are interacting with tech, right? But I think broadly, my experience was that the typical startup in Silicon Valley tends to be like some kind of SaaS product or some kind of tech play on top of existing tools. But in India, I think the problems that we have are different, and the stage that we're solving for is different as well, right? So,
Good. So again, just because we are talking about this, I just want to dig a little deep on this. A lot of folks say that from Crore you would have heard of. It's a startup in Bangalore, Kunal Shah. So he usually travels there to just understand how the ecosystem is working and how we can bring stuff here, meet a lot of smart people, to get more intellectually also raise the bar. And he's one of like a very good thinkers in India that we have and building a great product, right? But when it comes to again building in India versus building there, our target audience is a little different. Like the audience you're catering to is really very different, and I'm not sure if people would actually need a startup like that in the States, because I don't know if people are so religious or spiritual, or they want to do these kind of festivals. So in terms of that kind of ecosystem also, do you think there is a huge difference in the audience also, what we are catering to vis-a-vis the States?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I mean, I think those cultural differences even exist within the country, right? Like a lot of startups that we built within Bangalore are also Bangalore, Koramangala, Indira Nagar startups.
I agree.
And then tier one, then there's tier two, tier three. So of course, I think those cultural differences continue to exist. Like let's take the example of our product, right?
Mhm.
We are building for India. It's a very obvious use case in India.
Absolutely.
But actually, very interestingly, a lot of East Asian countries, or just generally Asian countries, use a lot of flowers. And in fact, recently both of us were in Thailand, and we saw that the flower usage there was so high. and we're just so tempted to be like, should we be opening an office here, right? It is obviously not part of the plan right now, but that demand and that use case exists. We get a lot of requests from the US, Australia, all of these places with Indian diaspora being like, hey, we want access to these flowers too. And as that diaspora population increases and that culture becomes more accepted, the use case increases there. So I think, of course, different nuances based on the company that you're building. But what's exciting, I think, in both places is this intellectual stimulation that you said, right? That there's a lot of focus on how do we disrupt. And even if people don't know what they want to do, they're thinking about that question, right? Saying, how do we continuously disrupt? What is it in my day to day that I want to change or I want to make better? And the minute we start thinking that way, you'll always, of course, you'll have a few ideas that will never do
Right.
well. But once you start having those ideas, the probability of getting a good one is high. I think that ecosystem change had happened in the Silicon Valley a long time ago. It's happening a lot in Bangalore right now. So that's super exciting to be in that ecosystem and constantly say, this is how things have always been done, but how do we do them differently? And you're inspired by ecosystems like this.
Agreed, agreed. Also, the culture thing which you mentioned, right? It's very good because when we're talking to VS Money, again, a startup based out of Bangalore, right? So they are saying that what we are trying to build is all the four, I would say four parts of the country are specialized in the culture, right? That they are doing, right? So, like a coffee decoction or just a coffee kind of thing is more like a South India kind of thing, which the culture they are trying to go pan India for, right? They are not just building the culture, they are wanting to get out of that culture and get that to different parts of the country, not just keep it to this side. So again, like when you talk about South Indian food like dosas, idlis and all, it's more like a South Indian traditional culture which people are getting in different parts of the country now. So that's what they were trying to do, is getting more than getting the product in the market, it's like meeting the southern culture in the market. So their biggest market right now is not Bangalore, but their biggest market right now is Mumbai, because they have managed to get that culture here, right? So I think that thing which you mentioned about was actually happening. And it's every part of our country has a different culture. Like eastern side of the India, I am from Kolkata, right? So I have a very sweet tooth, so I always make sure that I get someone get me sweets from there. Currently I'm residing in Mumbai. So these kind of things, I think, is gonna be more prevalent in the coming times, because then it will be like a more interculture thing in the entire India than just having their own culture in your own state, or maybe that part of that side of the country. Do you think this also makes sense in some way?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I mean, we've seen it happen in a global scale and now more so in India as a whole. There's so much to learn from each culture. And I think as these different companies try to take their specific culture to other places, there's a lot of learnings that you get from those new places. Like for us too, right? With flowers, using flowers for puja is a very common use case in India. But even within that, when you look at different places, they use flowers differently. For instance, something as simple as marigold. Marigold use case in Mumbai, Delhi, and stuff is so high. But actually, in the south, marigold is considered inauspicious for puja. So people might buy it to, decorate their house and stuff, but nobody like a South Indian will not use it in their daily puja, right? So for me to know that, and then for us to be like, okay, we don't give marigold in our like assorted flowers package in Bangalore, but we do that in Mumbai. That is like an innate cultural thing to understand. And then our customers are like, okay, they get it. Because I can't say I'm a puja flower company, and then if we don't know that basic fact, then they're like, okay, they're just doing something without understanding the significance behind it.
So, Riya and Yashoda, one question that I had more from a very consumer point of view, not consumer of your product, but say consumer of your startup brand, right? Is that the play that you guys are doing is more in traditional lines mixed with spirituality and culture, right? But again, the face that the company has is say Riya and Yashoda. They are youngsters. They are from say Gen Z, right? So how do these two themes tie in together, right? Because this is a, like, I mean, from a psychological aspect, this is very conflicting, or two conflicting personas that are coming hand in hand, right? So how does this amalgamation of sorts happens, and how is it that you guys are using it for your benefit rather than putting you on the back foot?
Mhm. I think even in our Shark Tank episode, like when they're starting out, I don't know if it's Namita or Vinita, but someone says like, "बहुत खूबसूरत साड़ी में कोई आएगा." Like, you expect someone slightly older, slightly maybe more traditional to kind of be doing this company. Um, But honestly, we always saw it as a strength, and I think our team saw it that way as well. I remember when we were first starting out, we would do a lot of apartment promotions. So we'd go like door to door in apartments and speak to customers. And our team would always tell them, they'd be like, it's these two young girls and they've started it and stuff. Because why not, right? Like, I think the ethos behind Hoovu has always been a fresh take on traditions. The idea that these traditions are really beautiful, like this ritual of puja is something that is really significant in people's lives. It takes up the same space that meditation or any mindfulness activity would in someone else's life. And it's really those 10 minutes of peace and gratitude, right? If we can make that experience more beautiful for people, whether you're a believer or not, you have to believe that that leads to a kinder and better world, right? Like if you're helping people connect with themselves and like be calmer, gentler, more grateful versions of themselves, they will take that out into the world with them as well, right? So you're already taking something really beautiful in the tradition, but you're looking at it with fresh eyes. Because the reality is that, we meet so many people who are like, oh, like younger people usually, and they're like, do people still do puja? Like, I'm not really sure, type of thing. And then once we talk to them, we're like, yeah, obviously the demographics are there, the data is there. But then afterwards, we meet them after 2-3 months, and they're like, now I see temples everywhere I go. I see flowers in every cab, auto, in people's hair. In my office, I'm seeing flowers. I've not noticed it for like 3 years or whatever. So it's like, it's just become invisible to us, right? A lot of people also do puja because their mother has told them or their grandmother has told them, kind of not really understanding the significance behind it or seeing the beauty in those rituals because they don't have the context behind it. So I think for us to come in as young people, I don't know if we're the face of the brand, but to come in as young founders and say, we know that there's a lot of beauty and meaning and significance here, and we want to look at it with fresh eyes again. I think that's what makes it work, honestly. I think like there's a reason that this industry hadn't been disrupted for so long, right? People were like, yeah, it's going on the way that it's going on. There are so many people who've been in this industry for like decades, like 3-4 decades of their life, they've been doing these puja flowers, right? But I think it helped to come in with new eyes and say, like, why not? Like, why can't we elevate this experience?
And a huge trap always is thinking that you know everything, right? And not knowing what you don't know. But when you come in to a traditional industry, and I think we both are spiritual in our own different ways, whether someone does puja or not as well. So to then come into this and say, well, this is a certain ritual. I may not have done it this way. My mother does it. I'm not fully familiar with a lot of these practices. Then we know what we don't know, and then we put in that effort to understand it. And then we actually ask the questions, right? You say, but why do people use this flower and not this? Why is it that this practice is so important to the person that's practicing it, right? And then when you get to the root of it, that's when you're really able to solve for it in a beautiful way. Otherwise, you become complacent, right? If I was somebody that assumed that, oh, puja is done this way and this is just how it is, I'm not going to think about innovative ways to say, how can we solve this problem better?
I think that's a very excellent, POV of sorts. And I think this gets validated also because a friend of mine had actually taken a trip with one of you, I don't know who, and she was saying that one of you had a constant bead chanter on your mobile, and while you were trekking or something, you were constantly, on that bead, on that mala chant. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So my friend was telling that, and I think that just very nicely marries to the entire answer that you said, right? So thank you so much for that. Just a couple of questions before we move to the whole Shark Tank piece, right? Is that when did you guys realize that, hey, we've hit PMF, right? Because like Rhea rightly said, there are a lot of players, and again, this is something that you mentioned in the episode as well, that puja flowers is a very sticky category, right? Like it's more of trust and faith and then quality and everything else, right? So to disrupt in a very sticky category with tech, which is on the religious front in a country like India, like how did you realize that, hey, we've hit PMF and there is some amount of growth trajectory that's visible from here?
Mm-hmm. So I think in the first year we used to do our own subscription, so end to end, up till the doorstep of the customer. And I think when we were able to scale that to around like 500, 600 customers per day, that's when we felt we really had that product market fit. Because going obviously from 0 to 10 was really difficult, but from 10 to 100 was much easier. 100 to 500 was much, much faster. I think within I would say like 3 to 4 months of pivoting completely into puja flowers is when we hit that number. So we knew that, there really was something that was working here. That's why we went into the Techstars Accelerator program as well. So I think it was like the perfect timing, right? Like as soon as you have that initial product market fit, how do you then put the accelerant on that and like grow it much faster? And that's what the Techstars Accelerator was all about. And I think for us, it was really about the kind of engagement we got from our customers, right? Like you're right in the sense that this is a sticky product. Like it's kind of like your milk and stuff. Like once you figure it out and set in your life, you don't want to keep changing it after that, which works out great for us. But it was a broken system, right? Like people weren't happy with the solution they were getting. It just happened to be the only solution they could get, which is the mandi flowers, right? So like yes, a lot of young people would be like, oh, do people do puja? But our customers, like they got it. Like the first, like we would say, oh, we do fresh puja flowers, and they would be like, yeah, done, sign me up, because they knew that the system wasn't working, that it was completely broken. And for everyone, they had different reasons to switch. For some people it was, I live really far away, so nobody comes and gives it to me, I have to pick it up on my way to work. For other people is like, oh, price fluctuates a lot. For most of them, I would say 90%, it was the quality. Like I don't even feel like doing puja because half the time these flowers are rotten or kind of dying and stuff like that. So in that way, I think it was really easy for us to say, yes, we do have a solution for it and we do have product market fit. Now we just have to kind of grow it from there.
Agreed. So basically, this is a very fragmented market, right? I mean, people generally go to a market which is like, vegetable market or any shop where you get such kind of products, and they go every day to buy fresh flowers, right? And with your product, the main thing which you have to build, as you said, was the quality of the product, and it should be as fresh as possible, because you're finally giving it, like putting it in front of God, and offering it to them and stuff like that. So how are you kind of maintaining, or because it's such a challenging situation, right, to maintain the quality and the freshness of the product you're building? First of all, how was this idea? I want to know in the backstory that how was the idea developed, or how did it come to your mind? And secondly, obviously supply chain is really very difficult to keep the freshness and the quality of the product very well. So how are you maintaining that also on the supply chain kind of thing? Like how is the procurement done? How do you send it across? So just these two questions are how this idea come up, and how do you kind of tackle these situations?
The idea of Hoovu as a whole, is that what you're asking? So the idea of Hoovu we got, in Feb 2019 is when we launched, so 4 years ago. And it was part of our pitch as well, but actually our mom was the inspiration, where we saw her doing her daily puja. And then it was like, we always obviously were around flowers because our family business was in flowers, and our dad and mom had built up a cut rose business. But we'd never seen flowers that we, having been in the industry, right? We're like, this puja flowers is such an obvious use case. You see these flowers everywhere, but as Rhea said earlier, they became invisible. They were like the background of every cab you were taking, every home you were visiting, but you weren't really paying attention to it. But watching that puja happen while I was thinking about, okay, what do I want to do next, was like that aha moment. And then when we discussed it with our father, he was like, this is so scalable. And, he was saying, like, just imagine walking into a grocery store and then you have like malas up there, and you're just, able to cut the mala that you require and take it from there, the same way you buy your vegetables. Why is that not a reality was the question that we were asking ourselves. And that's what we wanted to go out and figure out. That's how we started Hoovu. Freshness, as you said, is the most important thing. And in any fresh produce or any perishable, of course, freshness is important. But for us, like, we keep saying freshness because it came from that deep customer insight, where one of our customers said, he was like, we ask God for things throughout the day, but flowers are the one thing that we ask God and we don't take back. Then how can we not give the best product? Because the freshness of your flower is, for our customer, the reflection of their love to God. So how can you, compromise on your love to your beloved, your most important figure in your life, which is the God that you pray to, right? So that's where freshness was so important, because it wasn't just for our customers that, oh, today the flowers are not fresh. They were like, today, if you don't give me fresh flowers, you disrespected what I value the most in my life. So we couldn't ever compromise on that freshness, having given that. So the first thing we did have to figure out was the supply chain. But that was our background, right? Because our parents had farms in India and Africa, and we had grown up in that farming side of things, that was the easiest thing for us to solve, and that was very exciting as well. Talking to farmers, onboarding them, convincing them that this was a better model than what they were doing currently. And of course, Rhea built the entire tech that we used in-house as well, ensuring that tech was a very large play because it was going to be the enabler. Otherwise, it's impossible for us to, maybe 1-2 farmers, okay, but how are you going to get to 100, 500,000? So ensuring that that was there from day one, so that we're constantly automating things. Like in our supply chain, we're tracking literally every single flower. And that would be impossible if it wasn't for the right systems. And then, of course, our packaging, I'll let Rhea talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, in terms of so procurement, I think was the big part of it, working with farmers, getting it fresh from the harvest. We always knew we had to crack that. The packaging was kind of a happy accident. It was very iterative. So we kept being like, what more can we do? What's the best? I mean, this category didn't exist, right? So there was no format for us to follow in terms of packaging. We couldn't be like, bring the apple packaging, we'll just use that, or blueberries or whatever. We didn't know what would work. So we would iteratively kind of be figuring out, should we do this format? Should we do that? We really did a lot of experiments. I think our early customers remember it. They're like, it used to come in a box, right? And then it used to come in this different packet and then a clear packet. And so they remember all of that stuff that we did. So it was very iterative. And then actually this, like the processing that we do and the packaging and stuff like that, it's a mix of different steps, right? And it actually ended up, because one of the experiments, I forgot about it. I didn't even think that anything could last for 15 days. I just left it. Like I left it on the shelf for like 15 days. And I saw it and I was like, I totally forgot about this. But these flowers are so fresh right now. That seems extremely unlikely. And then I was like, okay, let me like try to redo whatever I've done the past time, blah, blah, blah. So we kept doing that. And I remember even when like the results, like when we finally like reproduced those results and we're like, this is actually lasting 15 days. We were presenting the findings to our team and we put it on like the last slide of our like 20 slide update. Because we were like, this is not realistic, like we're not going to be able to reproduce this much more. So honestly, it was like very iterative, like very experimental. And like, I don't think we believed it in the first 2-3 months, right? The thing about the 15-day shelf life is you have to wait for like almost a month before you can like reproduce the results again. So yeah, it was just a lot of like iterative like processing and stuff like that we stumbled upon.
Basically, it just came from that obsession around freshness. Like even now, everyone in the company is always thinking, what else can we do to make sure that our product is high quality, and high quality here equals freshness.
Got it. I think through that we get a very BTS of what was not shown on Shark Tank, but are the core building blocks to what Hoovu is today, right? But thank you so much for that. So now shifting gears and moving to the Shark Tank bit, right, where things started taking the entire momentum, right? So again, being very candid and first asking like, how was the experience like? How was it like being in the tank in front of the sharks? Like again, what was shown was 15-20 minutes, which was a very small part of the larger pitch, right? So how did you guys prepare for the pitch? And again, I mean, for all the founders who came in, they said that we were asked to speak in proper crisp Hindi, right? So even VS Money founders were like, hey, we are not native Hindi speakers, right? But we had to go through that entire journey. So we're happy to learn that entire experience.
Yeah, that I think was the biggest thing, because we pitched multiple times, and obviously it's our own company, so we're comfortable speaking about it. But as soon as Sony TV had reached out and they're like, oh yeah, but this is going to be in Hindi, I remember looking at Rhea and being like, impossible, we can't do this. But she was like, no, but we have to try. Like, this is Sony TV, this is Shark Tank. We have to, at least try to pull it off. So yeah, I mean, of course, that was a huge learning. A lot of practice, like our first round of pitching in Hindi. I remember our team seeing it and being like, oh God, these two are going to make a fool of themselves on national television. But yeah, it was a really exciting process. Overall, very, very positive. Usually when people think about reality TV, you don't really know what to expect. But I think the entire Sony TV team, the entire production team is so positive, and they genuinely want to see every company succeed, right? They want you to put your best foot forward. So even in terms of pitch help and like just thinking through how you want to do your presentation and the props, everything, right? They're always there to be like, okay, how do we support you so you can do a better job? And then they were like, once you walk through those doors, you're on your own in the tank. Till then, we're here to support you. So yeah, I think it was like a super exciting process overall, being in the tank with these founders. Obviously, the sharks, have done a lot and have achieved a lot through their companies. So it was really nice to be in that room with them. Our actual pitch was an hour and a half. Of course, on TV we only saw 15 minutes, so we also didn't know which parts would make it to TV. So it was a really free flowing conversation, honestly, with the sharks, and a lot of learnings from the kind of questions that they asked us as well. So yeah, I think that's how my experience was, but I'll let Rhea add to it.
Yeah, I think great experience overall. We were terrified about the Hindi part. We actually did our first audition tape in this room itself, and like we looked like prisoners. We're like, "Hi, mera naam," like it was so stressful, but great experience. The team was amazing. Obviously, we met a lot of other founders who were practicing at the same time as us. I think that gave us a lot of comfort as well, and we were all like rooting for each other. Like we would finish our filming and come out, and then each team as they would come out, they would be like, oh, like how did it go, and we would be like, oh, best of luck and stuff. So it was nice, there was a lot of camaraderie. And I think for us as founders, we were like, when else in our life are we going to be in a reality TV show or like in Yashraj Studios? Like it was just such a weird and like strange thing that we're so lucky to have experienced because of Hoovu, right? Like it's our company, but it's kind of taken us on a journey that even we didn't expect to be on. So I think it just feeling extremely fortunate that we got to experience this, and yeah, it was a great experience. Yeah, luckily no trolls or anything, so that's been good.
What made you like go to the tank? I mean, did you like decide from maybe season one that you want to be a part of the Shark Tank founders and you want to pitch to them, or it was just naturally that okay, let's try and see if we get a chance to be there?
Yeah, so actually, I had obviously seen clips of Shark Tank season one, but I hadn't watched the entire season and stuff. And then someone reached out to me on LinkedIn, and it was this person, and she was like, "Oh, like I'm reaching out for Sony TV. This is the application. We want you to be on Shark Tank too." And I was like, "This is obviously spam. Like why would Sony TV reach out to me?" Then I ignored it. I like didn't even respond. I was like, "Whatever." And then she reached out again. She's like, "This is not spam. Like I want you to apply to it." And then we got on a call with her actually, and we spoke through our reservations, right? Like the Hindi aspect, of course. And for us, Hoovu is a puja brand, right? Like people can make fun of us how much ever they want to, but that brand and what it represents is not something that we want people to ever be laughing at. Like there's a lot of people who put a lot of work behind it. There's a lot of customers who attach a lot of emotional value to it, and we don't take that lightly at all. So we were like, that's, we don't want to put it in a situation where it gets cheapened because of laughter and things like that. So I think then she really reassured us, and she was like, that's not what this show is about. And I encourage you to actually watch properly the entire season one and think about it, because we are about encouraging entrepreneurship in this country, right? Like it's not about putting down entrepreneurs or like saying that entrepreneurs are like begging for money, or that power equation isn't there in that show at all. It's that entrepreneurs are representing an opportunity, and the sharks are kind of willing to participate in that opportunity. That is the equation that's there. So I think all of that like convinced us, and we were like, okay. So we did the first audition tape. It was really, really bad. The Hindi was like Google Translate Hindi, and we were very uncomfortable. But she was like, it's okay. Like we'll work on it. We'll help you guys get better at your Hindi and stuff. They really helped us. That was also during our peak festival time. It was during Shravan Maas, so like August onwards. So I remember for the second application, she was like, hey, you haven't filled it out yet. And I was like, listen, we're so busy. It's Ganesh Chaturthi time. Please leave us alone. Like, business comes first before all of this stuff, right? But they were really supportive. They were like, no, it's fine. We'll extend the deadline for you guys. So apply again and stuff. So when I say they held our hand and they got us through, they really, really did it. Wouldn't have been possible without the Shark Tank.
Understood. What does Hoovu mean?
Hoovu means flowers in Kannada. And when anybody kind of thinks about puja flowers, they tend to think about it in their native language. We think about our mothers, our grandmothers. And being in Bangalore, we wanted to pay homage to our city.
Understood. Okay, got it. Now that you have investments and you have like the tech expert Piyush and you have the marketing expert Aman, right? How has the experience been working with them? How have they guided you post the tank, post the show, and how are the insights from them helping you make it or scale it to a much bigger brand than what it was during the tank, what it is now, and what it will be in the future?
So I think it's been great to like have those resources be available to us. I would say honestly, like not just the sharks like Aman and Piyush themselves, but even the larger Shark Tank community, right? Like there's like this group chat that we have of all of the different founders who had pitched on the show and stuff. And for Holi, actually, we're working with a bunch of other Shark Tank companies to like do different promotions and stuff. So I think like anytime you're plugged into the ecosystem, it's amazing. Shark Tank is like just another way to do that. We were actually in Delhi last week meeting Piyush. So that was really cool to like give him our products and get him to like touch and feel them and interact with it. Yeah, and we haven't met Aman yet, but we're looking forward to meeting him next week. So I think it's exciting. I think we're still like figuring out what exactly that means to have them be a part of the company. But we know that it's going to be something that's really exciting and fuel the growth that we see.
So, guys, like this is one patent question that we have for all the Shark Tank founders, right? Is that what was the growth response mayhem that was there post? The episode went on air, right? Like Rhea, you were talking about how you just did one refresh and there were 3,000 followers added to Hovu's Instagram after the episode went live, right? So, like, what was the scene like post airing, and how essentially were you able to manage things, and more importantly from the logistics side of things, right? Because like for everyone 3PL and all becomes a complete mess given the amount of demand surge that happens.
Mhm. So luckily for us, we actually had a model for exactly what it would look like, which is our festival season, right? Like we have our day-to-day bread and butter subscriptions, and then during Diwali, Ganesh Chaturthi, Varma Lakshmi, we see a huge spike, right? Like so seeing that like 20, 30, like it going up to those numbers, that's actually something that we experience on a regular basis. So that contraction and expansion of demand, I think we were fairly prepared for. We actually launched a new line of agarbattis, dupe sticks, dupe cones on our website right before Shark Tank, like literally, I would say like 2-3 days beforehand. So that was, I think, like new for us. Flowers were kind of used to expanding and catering to that demand, but that explosion and the love that we saw for the line of fragrances that we came out with, that was really cool. I think it was like all hands on deck. I don't think anyone slept properly for a week. But yeah, it's a good problem to have. Honestly, can't complain. Yeah.
And what was interesting was also just general love towards the company, not just customers and the sales aspect, but so many people applying for a job or, just saying, I don't know how I want to be involved, but I want to somehow be involved. Like, so remember me and stuff like that. So our inboxes were definitely like bombarded with a lot of emails, but it was great, right? Because you got a lot of great talent, you got connected to a lot of great people that loved the story and wanted to be involved with the company.
Understood. So again, now a little towards the business side of the things, right? You already have, like, obviously need a tech side of the things, you have operation side of the things, you need someone from the brand side of the things as well, right? So how big is your team? How are the roles divided amongst your team, especially between Riya and Yeshoda yourselves? And how you guys manage the day-to-day operations, day-to-day branding, and obviously I think the tech side manages all the supply chain orders and everything. So how are these three aspects managed internally between you and your team as well?
So our team is pretty large because we are an ops heavy business, right? So we usually 65 to 70 people, and during festivals we go up to even 100 people in our team. In terms of our corporate team, that's about 20 people that take care of these different functions. And we have a great team overall. Like, we were shooting during that Ganesh Chaturthi and like post that time during the festivals. So we weren't available at all on our phones, and we were in a different city, and our team was handling everything by themselves, right? So that way we've been super, super fortunate that everybody genuinely believes that they're building towards a larger vision, genuinely believes that Hoovu is something that they own. And we love that, right? And everyone, including our junior most supervisor to the most senior member of the team, has that ownership, which we absolutely love, and I think is a large part of the culture of the company. Um, amongst us in terms of the role. So I'm the CEO. I take care of the day-to-day operations, finance. Rhea is the CTO. She takes care of marketing and tech and product. So more than CTO as well. CMO is Rhea too.
Yeah. So Yeshda takes care of all, like the backbone of the business, the finance and the operations, and I get to do like the fun stuff, which is the marketing and product and stuff.
And the way that Rhea has built out our tech as well is that someone who's able to use WhatsApp should be able to use our tech. So we don't even need, like, it's not like there's the dashboard and someone's like, oh, okay, we need the tech team to help us with this. But everyone, including some of our supervisors and our packing team, who didn't even own phones before, right? They came, they started working, and I remember a couple of them the first day, they're like, yeah, I don't have a phone, so I can't give you a number to contact me. And I was like, how do we inform you of anything? They are so comfortable, of course, now with their phones, using the app, uploading data on like procurement and stuff. So that was really great, to be able to see that you're building for a team that may not be tech native or adopted as easily, but are able to adopt it now. And that's where a lot of our data comes in. That's where a lot of the systems come in from as well. So that's always really exciting to see that growth within team members.
I think that's super interesting in terms of how diligently the roles are divided, right? Because generally most people have 3-4 co-founders and everyone has one C attached to their title, right? So having multiple C's attached to one person is something very interesting. But before moving to the conclusionary ends of our conversation, right? One question that I wanted to ask you, and again, this is in tangency with the current campaign that you guys launched, is that for Holi, you guys have colors, right? For the colors part that you are putting out right now. So wanted to understand that 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, will flower be the MVP or the center focal product and there will be offshoots around, or will it be a very equitable distribution wherein for anything cultural, traditional or spiritual, Hoovu would be the brand that would be attached and not just flowers?
So we see ourselves as a puja consumables business, right? And that includes, of course, the colors for specific festivals, but your other products like the agarbattis and stuff as well. Flowers are always going to be at the heart of what we're building. And we are called Hoovu as well for a reason. That is our strength. That is what makes us different. And I think that's what excites us a lot as founders too, and as an entire company. Having said that, when it comes to the puja consumables, that actually came from a lot of demand from our customers. When the puja consumables market is pretty broken, right? There are a few maybe legacy brands that have existed for a long time, but most of the market is still unorganized. And first of all, people don't know which brands to buy from, and second, they don't know what constitutes a good quality product versus not. A lot of people get burns from kumkum because it's adulterated, but don't really understand how to know if they're getting fresh kumkum or not and stuff, right? So with us too, customers would tell us like, you're building for that high quality product, you're giving me fresh flowers, which is the hardest thing to solve in the entire puja basket. Why can't you give us the other products too? Because I don't want to go buy those other products from other places. So from that, we started looking at what are the products that we can add value and give to customers. And that's how, of course, we launched the agarbatti, dhoop cones, dhoop sticks, the holy colors, and have a few exciting launches lined up for the rest of the year as well.
I think for us, the ethos is the puja experience is broken, right? Like that was the first insight. That was how we got into this. The one that we addressed first was flowers because that was what we were most capable of addressing. But like Yeshoda said, the rest of the puja experience, like you get your wicks in these telas and then it's leaking and then things get mixed up, and it's supposed to be a pure and fresh experience, and it's really anything but, like your beautiful puja room, it's usually the most fancy room in the house, but all your puja items are like stuffed into one drawer or hidden behind the door because it's a point of visual pollution. It's not adding to your puja experience, actually usually detracting from it. So I think there's clearly an opportunity there, and there's something that needs to be solved. And for us, when we say we're a fresh take on traditions, that's what it is, right? Like even if you look at our holy colors that we're doing, we could have just launched, you just repackaged existing holy colors or whatever, do the natural colors which everyone else in the market is doing, but our colors are completely different, right? The formulation that we do, which it's pure flowers like powdered, right? Like it's 100% natural product, flowers and greens put together. It smells amazing even though there's no scents added in. There's Like the color is so much deeper than the kind of cornflower based natural colors that you typically get. So I think it's always about having a fresh take, right? Like if we're going to do holy powders, let's do something different in holy powders, which only we can do, which make you see the whole festival in a different way. Like Holi is a celebration of spring, right? It's about the colors which are already there in nature, like bringing them into your home. So that's why this product made a lot of sense to us. Like it's a synergy between those things. Even when we look at the rest of the puja experience with our agarbattis and dhoops, for example, that's our way in, right? Like not just, okay, people use agarbattis, so we're going to do agarbattis, but what can we do? So the natural agarbattis, people shouldn't feel like they're going to fall sick because they're lighting agarbattis in their own puja room. It's about purifying the air, like not making it worse. So having those natural products, having the floral element in there of recycling the flowers to make these agarbattis, I think each of these, it has to be meaningful, right? Like flowers was exciting to us to solve a problem, but also because we were good at solving that. Each product that we go after, I think, will be similar. It should be something that people want solved and something that we're capable of solving and bringing a fresh take to.
Got it. That's like a super insightful yet, subjective narrative on why and what you guys are doing, right? So now coming to the last two questions that we ask all founders or all panelists whom we host is that again, and this is very relevant to what Hoovu is, right? So we strongly, as thinking out loud, feel that we see founders and content is something that's going to be very overlapping in the future, right? And there will be a lot more commonality between them than distinction, right? So for a business like Hoovu, which is all about creating category in some sense and at the same time educating and making the consumer more aware, right? How do you think content play is going to be extremely helpful for your distribution at large? And secondly, because Yashoda, you and Rhea both are so well read and you have such very high degree pedigree in terms of education, right? What are the sources of learning or knowledge, if I may say so, that you use to keep yourself, abreast with not just with your business but in general, like knowledge in general?
I can do the first one. Honestly, it's not about how content is going to help us. It already has, right? I think from day one, content was something that was baked into our DNA. Because when we say a fresh take on traditions, how do you get people to relook at these flowers or these traditions, right? Like a big part of it is just giving them the context and the meaning behind what they've already been kind of doing. So content, I think, like from day one has been really important. Like it's just lovely to kind of revisit old things and see them in a new way, and that's what we're constantly trying to do with our community. I think it's impossible to build a community without kind of focusing on the content and information that you're giving them. Yeah, so I think that is the content piece and how we're handling that. Yeah.
In terms of learning, I think that's the biggest thing for every entrepreneur, and I think honestly for anyone that wants to succeed in their field. Like, how do you constantly focus on learning and observing your environment? Of course, there are different ways to learn. Both of us love reading. Rhea a bit more than me, so we spend a lot of time reading a lot of things, which is where we get a lot of our learnings from. But honestly, just looking around you is where you get a lot of your learning from, right? Spending time talking to your customers, spending time just observing how people are practicing the things that they do. Sometimes when you're building something and you're so focused on it, we become so obsessed with just that one problem, we're not looking at anything else. But actually, when you take a step back from what you're solving and just speak to other founders and want to understand how they build their businesses, there are a lot of learnings that you get from that. Like, I love like visiting other people's like offices and warehouses and asking them about their business. It has nothing to do with me. And like one of my friends runs a sweet shop, and I'm like, oh, can I visit your sweet factory? And she's like, are you interested in starting sweets? And I'm like, absolutely not. But that's why I want to spend time there, because you'll always get some sort of learnings when you put your brain in those situations. And even between us, we always share like interesting articles or a podcast that we've listened to that we like with each other, because I think there's always something to learn, and it's just about keeping your eyes and ears open always.
Yeah.
Any recommendations to read or listen to or something like that? Newsletters or probably anything which you follow regularly?
Personally, I listen to a lot of podcasts, which I enjoy. I like the Matrix Moments podcast a lot. I think it's really cool because you speak to a lot of founders there and stuff. And I recently read Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. And I think just generally spiritual literature excites me, not just because our business is in that space, but when you understand yourself better, I think you anyway start building better products and everything.
Mhm. Yeah, Matrix Moments for sure. Like there's an episode by Shashank Mehta, Whole Truth Foods, and I think we've seen it like so many times. We just love that episode. I think for me, I love to read a lot, so I think books is where really get a lot of things. I recently read Simply Fly by Captain Gopinath. That was really cool to see like how he switched between different industries and stuff. And I'm his big fan. Like I watched the movie that's based on his life and messaged him on LinkedIn like years ago. So that was really cool for me. I also really love this newsletter. It's by this author called L.M. Sakasis. It's amazing. It's like about tech, and it's always a very different perspective on tech than what everyone else is talking about, but a very deep dive. It's not like headliney or like buzzy stuff. So I love that. I think it helps me think a lot about what we're building as well.
Understood. Understood. I am a big book buff, so I also like to read a lot. But for some reason, I can't read fiction. So I just stick to non-fiction business books or books on finance, because that's my domain per se. So I think, but we had a recording yesterday, and he's like, read more fiction if you can, because the ideas which you have, because they think very creatively. The plot is very clever. The plot is very gripping. So it just gives you a lot of ideas on how. And it was that, don't read on your domain itself, just read something outside your domain, so it just kind of stretches your imagination and your expertise level. So I think that also really helps. And podcast, I'll surely take a note of the ones which you mentioned and start listening. I have not listened to them yet, so I'll try it out. But thank you so much for taking the time out today. I think it was absolutely a pleasure talking to you. You guys are building an experience which becomes pure, powerful and blissful for the users of your product, and that's what is required when you are offering something in front of God. And I think this is something which is really good, to be in a very fragmented market, but try to kind of channelize it and make it more organized. I think that's really going to be helpful. So thank you again. Keep